Cop and his daughter caught a man beating a German shepherd. The truth left everyone in tears. The wind screamed across Silver Bend like a wounded thing. Snow came down sideways, swallowing the road in white fury. Sheriff Luke Carter gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles pale against the cracked leather. Beside him, his 9-year-old daughter Emily peered through the windshield, her breath fogging the glass. "Dad, I can't see the school anymore. We'll make it, sweetheart," Luke said, voice steady but low. He'd faced storms before, both on duty and in life, but something about this one felt different, angrier, almost alive. They were half a mile from the school when Emily sat up straight. "Did you hear that?" Luke slowed the truck. For a moment, only the wind answered. Then it came again, a cry, faint but sharp, carried through the snow like a plea. Not human. Not exactly. "Stay in the car," Luke ordered. Emily's small hand caught his sleeve. "It sounded like someone's hurt." He nodded, stepping out into the storm. Snow bit his face as he clicked on his flashlight. The beam wavered through the haze, landing on a dark shape near the fence line. As he drew closer, his pulse quickened. A man was standing over something, arm swinging down again and again. The dull thuds of impact were swallowed by the wind, but the sound of pain, cut through everything. "Police! Step away!" Luke shouted. The man froze, then turned. His eyes, wild and unfocused, flashed under the flashlight's beam. "This isn't your business," he hissed, voice slurred. Luke's gaze dropped to the ground. There, half buried in the snow, was a German shepherd. Female. Her fur was matted with blood, ribs showing through the thin coat, a chain digging deep into her neck. She was barely breathing. Luke lunged forward. The man swung a length of pipe, missing Luke by inches. Years of training kicked in. Luke tackled him, the two rolling through the snow. A punch, a grunt, the smell of sweat and iron. Then the man broke free and bolted into the blizzard, disappearing into the white like a ghost. "Stop!" Luke called, but it was useless. The storm swallowed him whole. When he turned back, Emily was there despite his warning, kneeling beside the dog. "Dad, she's bleeding!" Luke dropped to his knees. The dog's body trembled violently, her breath shallow and ragged. He unlatched the chain, tossing it aside. "Easy, girl. You're safe now." Emily pulled off her scarf, bright red against the snow, and wrapped it around the shepherd's neck, pressing gently where the skin had split. Tears froze on her lashes. "She's so cold, Dad." Luke pressed a hand to the dog's chest. Faint heartbeat. He looked around, eyes narrowing. The man had left behind something in the snow, a black smartphone smeared with blood. He picked it up, the cracked screen flickering with a message notification. "Cargo lost. Retrieve." Immediately. He didn't understand. "Cargo?" The dog coughed weakly, then tried to lift her head. Her eyes met Luke's, amber, sharp even through pain. There was intelligence there, recognition, fear. Emily whispered, "She's looking at you." Luke swallowed hard. "Yeah, she's asking for help." He lifted the shepherd carefully into his arms, feeling her weight, light, too light. Her fur smelled of gasoline and iron. As he carried her toward the truck, a low rumble echoed behind him. He turned, headlights far off, cutting through the white. A dark SUV idling at the end of the road. Someone watching. Then the lights vanished. Back in the truck, Emily kept her hand on the dog's side, whispering softly. Luke started the engine, heat blasting. The radio crackled with static. He reached for the mic. "Dispatch, this is Carter. I need an emergency line to Dr. Hannah Miles. Animal critical, possible abuse, and—" He glanced at the phone again. "Something bigger." "Copy that, Sheriff," came the faint reply. The dog whimpered once, pressing her head against Emily's knee. Her eyes closed, breath shallow. Emily looked up, panic rising. Dad, she's falling asleep. Hold her steady, Luke said. We're almost there. They sped down the snow-packed road toward Silver Bend Veterinary Clinic. The headlights cut through the blizzard, but Luke's mind was spinning. The blood, the chain, the message, none of it added up. As they reached the clinic, Hannah burst through the door in her parka, shouting, "Bring her inside!" Luke carried the shepherd in, laying her on the metal table. Hannah's hands moved fast, checking pulse, pupils, wounds. Multiple fractures, deep lacerations. My God, Luke, what happened? She was being beaten. Guy took off before I could cuff him. Left this. He handed her the phone. Hannah's eyes widened at the message. Cargo lost. What the hell does that mean? Before Luke could answer, the clinic lights flickered. Emily looked toward the frosted window. Dad, she whispered. There's a car outside. Through the snow-streaked glass, Luke saw them again. The same SUV, idling across the street, engine running but headlights off. Lock the doors, he said quietly. The wind howled harder, rattling the windows. Hannah's hand stilled for a second over the shepherd's chest. She's strong, she said softly. She wants to live. Luke met her eyes. Then we'll make sure she does. Outside, the SUV's engine cut off. The sound of the storm filled the silence. Inside, beneath the fluorescent light, the battered German shepherd opened her eyes again, slowly, deliberately, and for the first time, let out a hoarse, broken bark. It wasn't fear, it was a warning. And deep in Luke's gut, he knew. This wasn't just an act of cruelty. It was the beginning of something much darker. The snow had slowed to a restless whisper by the time Luke and Emily reached the clinic. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Dr. Hannah Miles pulled on her gloves. Her face was pale, but her hands moved with the quiet authority of someone who'd seen too much to hesitate. "Get her on the table," she said. Luke eased the German shepherd onto the stainless steel surface. The dog's breathing was uneven, shallow but determined. Emily stood on her toes beside the table, her red scarf now soaked with blood. She fought to stay alive. Luke said, watching the rise and fall of her ribs. Didn't make a sound until we brought her in. Hannah adjusted the oxygen mask, checking the pulse. She's hanging by a thread, but that's one tough girl. The machine beside her beeped in rhythm with the dog's heart. Luke's radio crackled faintly in his pocket, but he ignored it. "What's her name?" Emily asked softly. "We'll find out soon," Hannah said, rolling the ultrasound device over the shepherd's abdomen. "She's pregnant. Very close." Luke blinked. "Pregnant? 2, maybe 3 pups," Hannah confirmed. "But there's something else." She moved the probe again, frowning at the screen. "Her vitals are off the charts. High adrenaline, irregular heart rate. Could be chemical residue." She glanced at Luke. "You said the man who hurt her ran. What if she wasn't just a dog he owned?" Luke handed over the blood-smeared phone. "He left this behind. Message said, 'Cargo lost. Retrieve immediately.' Sounds more like a shipment than a pet." Hannah hesitated, then reached for the scanner. "Let's see who she really belongs to." The chip reader beeped once, then stuttered. The small monitor flashed lines of corrupted data, half a serial code, half static. Hannah frowned. "That's strange. The number's partially erased, not civilian. I've only seen something like this once, when I interned with a military canine rehabilitation program." Luke stepped closer. "Military." She nodded. "This chip's from a decommissioned unit. Classified dogs used for narcotics or explosives detection. The entire program was shut down 6 years ago after reports of mistreatment." She looked up, eyes dark. "Every file was supposed to be destroyed." Emily looked between them. "So someone brought her back." Before Hannah could answer, the shepherd stirred. Her ears twitched, a soft growl rumbling from deep in her chest. The room went still. Then she jerked upright, snarling toward the frosted window. Luke followed her gaze. A pair of headlights glowed faintly through the snow. A black SUV idled across the street, engine running, lights dimmed. "Someone's watching," Hannah whispered. Luke moved to the window, his hand brushing the pistol at his side. The vehicle didn't move, didn't even pretend to hide, just sat there, breathing exhaust into the cold air. He turned back to Hannah. "You got a back exit?" She nodded. "Through the kennel. Corridor." He took out his radio, pressing the button. "Dispatch, this is Sheriff Carter. I need a patrol unit near Silver Bend Veterinary Clinic. Possible surveillance." The static lasted longer than usual before the voice came through. "Copy that. Hold position." Then another voice cut in, lower, older. "Carter, stand down." It was Captain Briggs, his superior from the county office. Luke frowned. "Sir, we've got a suspect vehicle across from the clinic, tied to an assault case. Drop it, Luke." Briggs interrupted. "You don't know what you're walking into. This case is above your clearance. File the report as animal cruelty and leave it there. That's an order." Luke froze. "Above my clearance? I'm the sheriff of Silver Bend, not a rookie." "Then act like one," Briggs said, voice clipped. "You have a daughter. Don't make this your hill to die on." The line went dead. Emily tugged his sleeve, her eyes wide. "Dad, what did he mean?" Luke didn't answer. He slipped the radio back into his jacket, jaw tightening. The shepherd was still tense, her eyes locked on the window. Her fur bristled along her spine, tail stiff. She wasn't afraid, she was guarding. Hannah approached carefully, running a hand along the dog's neck. "Easy, sweetheart. You're safe now." The dog didn't move. Her gaze followed the headlights as they flickered once, twice, then went dark. Luke checked the lock on the door. The parking lot was silent again. "Someone knows she's here," he said quietly. Hannah nodded. "And they're not going to let her go." She drew blood samples, her brow furrowing as she examined the vial. "Luke, look at this." The blood shimmered faintly, a strange metallic sheen. "That's not normal. It's synthetic, some kind of stimulant, military grade." "You're saying they drugged her?" "Not just that, they engineered her. She was enhanced for endurance or obedience. But it's killing her now." Emily's voice trembled. "Can't you fix it?" "I'll try," Hannah said, "but she needs rest, warmth, and trust. Those might save her more than medicine can." Luke stood at the window, snow still falling in sheets. The SUV was gone now, leaving only 2 tire tracks cutting through the powder. He turned to the table. The shepherd's eyes had softened again, though her chest still rose unevenly. She looked at Emily, and for a moment the child's reflection glowed in her amber gaze. Fear meeting faith. Luke reached out, laying a hand gently on the dog's paw. "You're safe with us, girl, I promise." For the first time, she didn't flinch. Her tail moved once against the steel table, a slow, tired motion. Outside, a snowplow rumbled by, masking the sound of a second car pulling into the alley behind the clinic. Inside that car, a man lifted a phone to his ear. "Target located," he whispered. "The dog's alive." Then he started the engine, and the tail lights disappeared into the storm. The night after the storm, the world around Silver Bend fell into a fragile quiet. Snow blanketed the roofs and muffled every sound. Luke parked his cruiser outside the house, the headlights dimming against the frost. Inside, the warmth felt temporary, almost borrowed. Emily had fallen asleep on the couch, wrapped in a blanket. The German shepherd lay curled nearby, her breathing steady now, her fur glistening where Hannah had cleaned away the blood. Luke sat at the kitchen table with the stranger's phone, its cracked screen still glowing. He scrolled through the messages again, short, coded, almost military. Cargo retrieved. Route change confirmed. Unit offline. Then one line that made his stomach turn. K9 Series 14B through 18C lost. He opened an old police database on his laptop and typed the code in. Results flashed. Government contract files sealed under the Department of Defense, all dated the same year. 6 years ago. The same time Hannah said the K9 program was shut down. He leaned back, rubbing his temples. What the hell were they doing in Silver Bend? A soft whine broke his focus. The shepherd had lifted her head, ears pricked, her amber eyes fixed on the dark window. Luke stood, instinct kicking in. You hear something? The dog rose slowly, legs trembling but firm. She moved between Emily and the window, her stance low and protective. Outside, snowflakes glittered under the faint glow of the porch light. For a moment, Luke thought he saw movement near the tree line. Then nothing. He crouched beside her. You've got good instincts, he murmured. You're not just any dog, are you? Her tail gave one cautious wag. Emily stirred on the couch. Dad, did she wake up? Yeah, Luke said, glancing over his shoulder. She's tougher than she looks. Emily pushed herself upright and smiled weakly. She needs a name. Luke thought for a moment, watching the shepherd's steady gaze. Roxy, he said finally. She looks like a Roxy. The dog blinked, as if testing the name, then rested her head gently on Emily's lap. The girl giggled softly. See, she likes it. Luke smiled, but it didn't last. His gaze drifted to the back door, where a faint reflection flickered against the glass. Outside, beyond the barn, a light moved, a narrow beam cutting through the trees. He froze. Someone was out there. He grabbed his flashlight and gun from the counter, whispering to Emily, Lock the front door. Don't move until I say. Roxy's ears twitched again. She stood, silent but alert, and followed him to the back door. Luke opened it carefully, stepping into the cold. The snow was knee-deep, the air sharp and still. The light flashed again, closer this time, coming from the direction of the old storage shed. He crept forward, boots crunching softly. His flashlight caught the side of the barn, where the padlock hung broken. Inside, a shadow shifted. Ah, Silver Bend Police! Luke called, gun raised. Show yourself! No response, just the faint shuffle of feet. Then the sound of metal scraping. He moved closer. The smell hit first, fuel and blood. Suddenly, the figure lunged from behind a stack of crates, slamming into him. They crashed into the snow, his gun flying from his hand. The man was strong, desperate. Luke caught a flash of tattoos on his wrist, military insignia half-burned. Where is she? The man growled, voice low and ragged. Luke drove a fist into his ribs. Who? The dog. He spat, trying to reach for something at his belt. Before he could pull it free, a dark blur shot through the snow. Roxy. She collided with the man, teeth sinking into his forearm. He screamed, dropping the pistol he'd been reaching for. Luke scrambled to his feet, kicking the weapon away. Roxy, back! He shouted, but she wouldn't let go. Only when the man stopped struggling did she finally release him, standing over him, chest heaving, eyes fierce. Luke cuffed the intruder and hauled him upright. Blood ran down the man's sleeve, steaming against the snow. Name, Luke ordered. The man spat into the snow. You don't know what you're in the middle of, Sheriff. Luke tightened his grip. Try me. The man smirked, teeth red. Silas Grant. The name hit Luke like a slap. Silas Grant, ex-military contractor turned drug lord, rumored dead years ago after a raid gone wrong in Utah. His name had been buried along with the K-9 program scandal. Luke's pulse quickened. "You're working for him? I'm working for survival." The man muttered. "And you just put a target on your back." A faint beeping came from his pocket. Luke pulled out a small transmitter, still blinking. Someone was tracking him. He looked toward the woods. Far off, another flash of headlights blinked once, like a signal, then vanished. Roxy growled deep in her throat. Luke yanked the man to his feet. "You're coming with me." Inside the house, Emily stood by the window, her small face pale against the glass. She saw her father dragging the man through the snow, Roxy walking beside him like a soldier. When Luke shoved the man into the back of his cruiser, he caught sight of the transmitter again, still pulsing red. It wasn't just a tracker. It was a beacon. Someone knew exactly where they were. As he shut the car door, the radio on his shoulder crackled to life. A distorted voice came through, calm and deliberate. "You found one of mine, Sheriff," the voice said. "But you can't keep her." Luke froze. "Who is this?" Silence. Then a faint chuckle. "She's marked, and what's marked always finds its way home." The transmission cut out. Luke stood there, breath clouding in the cold, the weight of the moment pressing down. In the cruiser, the prisoner looked terrified now. Roxy stood in the snow beside him, watching the darkness beyond the trees. Her fur bristled, but she didn't move. She simply waited. Somewhere deep in the woods, a wolf howled, a low, lonely sound carried by the wind. Emily opened the door, her voice small. "Dad, what's going on?" Luke holstered his gun, glancing at Roxy before answering. "Something bad's coming, sweetheart, but we've got a good dog on our side." He looked down at her. The dog met his eyes, steady and calm. And in that silence, Luke understood. Roxy wasn't just protecting them. She was warning them. Whatever this was, it wasn't over. It was only beginning. The interrogation room smelled of metal, sweat, and bleach. Luke stood by the window, arms crossed, watching the man they'd caught behind the barn, hands cuffed, face pale under the flickering fluorescent light. Deputy Cole Briggs sat across the table, his notepad untouched. The man's name was Martin Keene, a known enforcer once tied to federal contractors. Now he looked broken, his bandaged arm still bleeding through the gauze. Luke leaned in. "Let's start again. Who's Silas Grant?" Keene laughed, a dry, hollow sound. "You already know. The name you whispered when you cuffed me told me that. Answer the question." "He's not a name anymore. He's a system. You think you caught a man, you caught a shadow." Luke slammed his hand on the table. "You were trespassing armed and you attacked an officer. I could make this easy or hard." Keene's smirk faded. "You think this is about drugs? You don't even see it yet. Silas runs the routes the government buried. Ex-military assets. Reassigned dogs. They called them redundant units. He calls them couriers." Cole frowned. "Couriers for what?" Keene's gaze flicked up. "Synthetic opiates. Liquid form. Sealed in polymer canisters implanted in the dogs' bodies. They train them to cross terrain no vehicle can reach. When the job's done, they kill the dogs, retrieve the goods, and burn the evidence." Luke felt something twist in his gut. "And Roxy?" Keene hesitated. "She got away during an extraction in Black Hollow 2 months ago. She wasn't supposed to. But she's not just a dog anymore, Sheriff. She's carrying the last shipment that never made it. And whoever owns that shipment wants her back." Luke's jaw tightened. He remembered Hannah's words about Roxy's blood. Synthetic chemicals, foreign compounds. The image of her trembling on that metal table flashed through his mind. "Who gave the order?" he demanded. Keene's expression hardened. "You already talked to him." Luke's breath caught. "What are you talking about?" But Keene only smiled. Check your phone, Sheriff. Luke pulled it from his belt. A new message blinked on screen from an unknown number. Release him. Transfer case to county jurisdiction. Do not pursue. Cole's phone buzzed at the same time. He looked at the screen, then at Luke. It's from Captain Briggs. Luke's pulse quickened. You've got to be kidding me. Keene leaned back in his chair, eyes glinting. See, told you. The system protects its own. Luke turned to Cole. We're not letting him go. Cole hesitated. If it's coming from Briggs, it's an official order. An order to protect a criminal. An order from the chain of command. Cole shot back, frustration creeping into his voice. You know how this works, Luke. You go against it, they'll hang you before sunrise. Luke stared at him. You think I care? Silence filled the room, thick and tense. The heater clicked once, then died. Cole rubbed the back of his neck. Look, I don't like this any more than you do. But if you're right, if this guy's part of something bigger, you'll need proof. Right now, all we've got is his word. Luke stepped closer to Keene. If I release you, he comes for you first. You know that. Keene shrugged. I've been hunted before. Luke studied him for a long moment, then turned to Cole. Fine. We'll do it by the book. For now. Cole exhaled. Relief and guilt tangled in the same breath. He unlocked the cuffs, keeping his gun ready. You're free to go, but don't leave town, he said. Keene grinned. I was never really here. As he walked out, Luke felt the walls closing in. Something inside him cracked, a small, dangerous doubt in the badge he'd worn for 15 years. When they stepped outside, the air was colder than before. Roxy was waiting near the cruiser, sitting alert, her breath misting in the night air. Emily had insisted on bringing her, and now she sat in the back seat, stroking the shepherd's head. Cole stopped beside Luke. I know that look. You're thinking of going after him. Luke's jaw clenched. He's going to lead us straight to Silas. You're risking your job. Luke's voice was low. If I don't, I risk everything else. From the parking lot, Keene's figure moved toward the streetlights. Halfway down the road, a car rolled up. Black SUV, windows tinted. Keene stopped, looked back once, then got in. Seconds later, the SUV sped off into the snow. Cole cursed under his breath. They were waiting for him. Luke didn't move. He just watched the tail lights fade into the white distance. They were watching us too. He opened the cruiser door and climbed in. Roxy immediately lifted her head, eyes sharp, ears forward. She was ready again. Emily's voice came from the back seat. Dad, are we in trouble? Luke started the engine. Not yet. Cole looked at him. So what now? Luke shifted the gear into drive. Now we find proof before they erase it. As they pulled away, Roxy leaned her head against Emily's lap, her amber eyes reflecting the passing street lights. She looked calm, but Luke saw something else in her gaze. Recognition. When they drove past the edge of town, she suddenly straightened, ears pricked. A low growl vibrated in her chest. Luke slowed the car. What is it, girl? She turned her head toward the ridge above the highway. Through the snow, faint red dots blinked, infrared lenses scanning, watching. Luke's stomach turned cold. They're tracking her. Cole reached for the radio, but it only hissed with static. Luke hit the brakes. They've jammed the line. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then Roxy barked once, sharp and loud, the sound echoing through the snow. It wasn't a sound of fear. It was a warning. Luke gripped the wheel. They want her back alive. Cole looked over. And if they can't? Luke met his eyes. Then none of us make it through this night. He hit the gas. The cruiser shot forward into the storm, headlights cutting through the white. Behind them, on the ridge, the blinking lights vanished into the dark. Waiting, watching, hunting. And in that endless stretch of snow, Luke Carter understood the truth he'd spent his whole life trying not to see. Sometimes the law wasn't protection. It was the chain that kept the lies alive. The wind had died down, but the cold carried something else now, tension, sharp and metallic. Luke's fingers drummed against the steering wheel as the cruiser rolled down a dirt road that cut through the snowbanks at the edge of Silver Bend. Cole sat beside him, silent, and Roxy lay in the back, her amber eyes locked on the darkness ahead. Luke's laptop sat open on the dash, screen glowing faintly. He'd cracked the last of the phone's encrypted files earlier that evening. Coordinates, timestamps, and shipping codes, all pointing to one location. An old fuel transport depot that had been shut down years ago after an explosion. According to the records, it was condemned, but satellite images from 3 nights ago showed fresh tire tracks and heat signatures. Cole broke the silence. "You sure about this?" Luke nodded, eyes still on the road. "We don't have a warrant, and Briggs will bury the request before dawn. If we wait, they'll move everything." Cole sighed. "You're talking about breaking into a federal site, Luke. I'm talking about finding the truth." The snow thinned as they reached the perimeter fence. The place loomed ahead, rows of rusted tanks, skeletal structures half swallowed by ice. The night air smelled faintly of oil and something chemical. Luke killed the headlights. "Thermals showing movement?" he said quietly, checking the scanner. 2, maybe 3 heat sources inside. Cole gripped his rifle. "Could be homeless scavengers. Or someone cleaning up the mess." Luke stepped out, boots sinking into the snow. Roxy jumped down behind him, moving low, cautious but ready. She sniffed the air, ears twitching. A low growl vibrated in her chest. Luke crouched beside her. "You smell it too, huh?" She barked once, softly, then moved ahead. They slipped through a gap in the fence and crept toward the main hangar. The huge sliding door hung slightly ajar. Luke pressed his ear to the metal. Nothing. He motioned for Cole to flank left. The air inside was stale and heavy, thick with dust and something else. Ammonia, maybe. Luke switched on his flashlight. The beam landed on a row of steel crates, each marked with a faint logo. Ridge Logistics. But on one, the paint had been scraped off, replaced with a series of numbers, 14B, the same code from the K9 files. His pulse quickened. "Cole, this is it." Cole crouched beside him. "Looks like containers for chemical transport." Luke reached for one of the seals. It popped open with a hiss. Inside was a small capsule the size of a thumb, wrapped in clear polymer. Liquid glimmered faintly within. "God," Cole whispered. "This is the stuff Keene was talking about." Before Luke could answer, Roxy barked sharply. She was standing near the far wall, staring at a flickering light on the ceiling. A red diode blinked in steady rhythm. Luke's blood ran cold. "Trip sensors." He barely got the word out before the world exploded. The blast ripped through the hangar, turning metal into shrapnel. Luke was thrown backward, hitting the concrete hard. His ears rang, vision swimming. The heat rolled over him, suffocating. "Cole!" he shouted, coughing through the smoke. "Cole, answer me!" No reply, only the roar of fire and the twisted groan of collapsing beams. He tried to stand, but fell again. Blood streaked his sleeve. The air stank of burning fuel. Somewhere in the haze, Roxy barked, desperate, insistent. Then she was there, pushing against him, teeth tugging at his jacket. He blinked through the smoke. Her front leg was bleeding, a deep gash near the shoulder, but she kept pulling. He could barely hear her whines over the fire. "Go!" he rasped, trying to push her away. "Get out!" She didn't. She planted herself beside him, bracing her body against his, and dragged with every ounce of strength she had. He crawled, half-conscious, following her weight through the collapsing haze until cold air hit his face. They stumbled out through a side door just as the roof caved in behind them. The explosion roared again, lighting up the night sky. Luke hit the ground, gasping. Snow hissed where the embers landed. Beside him, Roxy collapsed, panting hard, blood dripping into the white. "Stay with me," he said, pressing a hand to her chest. Her heartbeat pounded weakly under his palm. He forced himself up and stumbled back toward the wreckage. Flames clawed at the sky, devouring everything. The crates, the capsules, the evidence, all gone. Sirens wailed in the distance. Blue and red lights flickered through the smoke. Cole. He turned and saw movement. A figure crawling from the wreck, face blackened, one arm hanging uselessly. Luke ran and pulled him clear. Cole coughed, eyes wild. "It was a trap," he wheezed. "They knew we were coming." Luke glanced back at the inferno. "No one was supposed to know." Cole's voice broke. "Someone told them, inside the department." The words hit like a bullet. An hour later, the fire was under control. The entire site was nothing but twisted metal and frozen ash. Luke sat on the tailgate of an ambulance, wrapped in a blanket. His uniform was torn, face streaked with soot. Across from him, Roxy lay on a stretcher. Hannah knelt beside her, stitching the wound. "She'll live," Hannah said softly. "But it's bad. The tendon's torn. She'll need rest." Luke nodded absently, eyes on the charred remains of the warehouse. Reporters were already gathering beyond the barricades. Captain Briggs arrived just before dawn, coat collar turned up against the wind. He didn't ask if Luke was hurt. He just handed him a folded envelope. "Effective immediately, Sheriff Carter. You're on administrative leave pending review of tonight's incident." Luke stared at him. "You think I set this up?" "I think you acted without clearance, without a warrant, and got one of my deputies nearly killed." Briggs replied coldly. "We'll take it from here." Luke didn't answer. He just looked back at the blackened wreckage, at the smouldering ruin that had once held the truth. Everything they'd risked was ash now. As Briggs turned to leave, Luke called after him. "How long have you been covering for them?" Briggs stopped but didn't turn. "Be careful what you accuse, Luke. You might not like the answer." He walked away, his shoes crunching on the ice. Luke's hands clenched at his sides. Behind him, Roxy stirred, lifting her head weakly. Her eyes found him, steady and unbroken, as if to remind him that not everything was lost. He knelt beside her, brushing soot from her muzzle. "You saved me again, girl," he whispered. Her tail moved once, a faint, exhausted wag. The paramedic shouted for him to step back, but Luke stayed where he was. He looked at the rising smoke, at the faint orange glow fading into the horizon, and realized the worst part wasn't that he'd failed. It was that someone on the inside had wanted him to. And as the sun bled over the snowy hills, Luke Carter, once a man who believed in the badge, understood that faith, like fire, could only survive if it didn't burn everything else with it. Snow battered the windows of Silver Bend Veterinary Clinic, the night sky fractured by lightning that looked almost white against the darkness. Inside, Hannah Miles was pacing between the operating table and a heater, her hands trembling, though she tried to hide it. On the table, Roxy panted heavily, her eyes glassy, muscles tightening with each contraction. "Her labor started too early," Hannah said, wiping her forehead. "The explosion trauma didn't help. She's losing strength fast." Luke stood near the door, still wearing his suspension badge tucked inside his jacket. He wasn't supposed to be here, but rules meant nothing anymore. Not when Roxy's life, and something deeper, hung in the balance. Emily knelt beside the table, stroking Roxy's ear. "You can do this, girl. You're strong." The shepherd lifted her head, pressing her nose to Emily's wrist, then to Luke's hand. Her breathing quickened. Hannah injected another dose of oxytocin, murmuring encouragements like prayers. Outside, wind howled through the trees. The power flickered once, then again. Luke glanced at the generator gauge. It was dipping. We might lose power. Then we keep going by flashlight, Hannah said. Roxy's body shuddered. A sharp cry pierced the air, not a bark, but something between pain and defiance. Luke took a step closer, his throat tightening. She's fighting! Emily's voice was small. Dad, what if she won't? Luke said, firmer than he felt. Roxy tensed, pushing again. A minute later, Hannah gasped softly. First one's out. A tiny whimper followed. Hannah wrapped the newborn in a towel and rubbed its chest until it squealed. A girl. Strong heartbeat. Emily smiled through tears. She did it. But Roxy wasn't done. Her muscles clenched again, body trembling. Hannah glanced at Luke. Hold her steady. He knelt beside Roxy, his hands firm on her shoulders. It's okay, girl. You're safe now. Outside, the wind changed. A low, mechanical hum rolled across the snow. Luke froze. You hear that? Hannah looked up. What is it? Engines, he said quietly. More than one. Headlights flashed through the front windows, cutting across the snow like knives. The generator sputtered and died. The next moment, the glass shattered. Gunfire tore through the clinic, splintering cabinets and glass vials. Emily screamed. Luke threw himself over her, pushing her behind the counter. Get down! Roxy barked, loud, commanding. Her instincts overrode exhaustion. She forced herself up, blood staining the towel beneath her, teeth bared. Hannah crawled for the light switch, but Luke grabbed her wrist. Stay down. They want her alive. Figures moved outside, men in dark winter coats, flashlights mounted to their rifles. Through the haze, Luke recognized one face in the doorway, cold and expressionless. Silas Grant. Step away from the dog. Silas called. You have no idea what you're protecting. Luke rose halfway, pistol drawn. I know exactly what I'm protecting. Silas smiled faintly. That animal is worth more than you, your badge, and this entire town. Before Luke could answer, a gunshot cracked from the side window. The bullet slammed into a cabinet inches from his head. Emily cried out. Roxy growled, low and deep, a sound that came from something ancient inside her. Then she moved. Despite the pain, Roxy lunged toward the front door as Silas's men kicked it open. She hit the first one mid-step, teeth sinking into his arm, dragging him down in a blur of fury. Another man swung his rifle toward her. Luke fired twice, one shot through the man's shoulder, another into the ceiling light. The room went half dark. Hannah grabbed Emily and pulled her under the steel table. Glass shattered again as snow and wind poured in. Roxy didn't stop. Even bleeding, she stood between the attackers and the child. She snarled, warning them off, as Luke reloaded. Silas stepped forward, face lit by muzzle flash. She's mine, Sheriff. She belongs to the program. Luke fired. The bullet grazed Silas's coat, sending him stumbling back. The wind outside roared louder, merging with the storm. Lightning flashed, lighting up the chaos. Roxy, still standing, trembling from effort. Blood ran down her leg, pooling beneath her, but she didn't fall. Then, through the thunder and gunfire, a sound broke through, high-pitched, fragile. A whimper. Hannah gasped. Luke, another pup. Luke turned. Amid the smoke and snow, one tiny body slid onto the towel. Roxy turned her head, weak but alert, and licked it clean. The gunfire stopped for a breath. Even Silas hesitated, eyes flicking towards the newborn. Luke used the pause to shove over a heavy cabinet, blocking the door. We're done here, Grant. From outside came the rising wail of sirens, distant, growing closer. Silas cursed under his breath. "This isn't over," he signaled his men. "Fall back." Engines roared, tires spinning in the snow. The vehicles vanished into the storm just as police cruisers crested the hill. Inside, silence settled slowly. Smoke hung in the air, and the smell of gunpowder mixed with antiseptic and blood. Hannah knelt beside Roxy. "She's in shock, but she's alive. All of them are." Luke dropped beside her, pressing a hand to Roxy's neck. Her breathing was ragged but steady. "You did it, girl. You protected them." Roxy's tail twitched weakly. Her eyes met his, softening with recognition. Emily crawled out from under the table, holding the towel with the small, wriggling puppy. "Dad, look. She's okay." Outside, red and blue lights painted the snow. Officers swarmed the perimeter, shouting orders. Luke looked down at the tiny pup in Emily's hands, its fur damp, its heartbeat rapid but strong. He smiled faintly. "4 of them," he said. "4 new lives." Hannah nodded, tears in her eyes. "Born in the middle of a war." Luke stood, staring out through the broken window into the blizzard. Then maybe they'll grow up knowing how to survive one. Roxy let out a long, tired breath, her eyes closing. Her body sagged, but her pups pressed close for warmth. Emily whispered, "She's so brave." Luke's voice was low. "Braver than any of us." Snow fell quietly now, soft flakes landing on the window ledge, melting against the lingering heat. The storm outside had begun to break, but the one inside Luke still raged on, a war between law, loyalty, and the truth he couldn't unsee. He looked at Roxy and her, newborns, the glow of the heater flickering against them. For the first time in weeks, he felt something he thought he'd lost. Hope. The snow had thinned, but the cold still bit through the valley. A week had passed since the gunfight, and the clinic now sat quiet under a grey sky. Luke hadn't been back in uniform since his suspension. Most days he stayed close to Roxy and her pups, helping Hannah feed them from glass bottles. Emily spent her time drawing near the heater, pictures of Roxy, of the night they survived. But today her attention snagged on something else. The evidence bag lay half open on the counter, filled with scraps salvaged from the explosion. Burned circuits, melted metal, a few shards of glass. Among them, a tiny black device rolled loose, blinking faintly. Curious, Emily picked it up. It was small as a coin, with a faint pulse of red light. She tapped it, and a soft beep answered. A GPS unit. The small screen lit briefly, showing coordinates pulsing north of town. Pine Ridge. Emily's brow furrowed. She remembered that name from her father's maps, a forest he once said was off-limits after last year's wildfire. Roxy, resting nearby, lifted her head as if sensing something. Emily whispered, "You feel it too, huh?" The shepherd stood, still weak from her wounds, but her eyes alert. She limped to the door, tail flicking once, urging Emily to follow. "Okay," Emily murmured, tucking the tracker and a flashlight into her coat pocket. "Just to look. We'll be back before Dad wakes up." She bundled in layers, grabbed Roxy's leash, and slipped into the morning fog. By the time Hannah noticed the back door ajar, Emily was already miles away. Luke came downstairs minutes later, rubbing his temples. "Where's Emily?" Hannah's face was pale. "She's gone. The evidence bag's open. Luke, the tracker's missing." Luke's heart dropped. "Pine Ridge," he whispered. "She must have seen the signal." He grabbed his coat, radio and sidearm. "Call dispatch. I don't care if I'm suspended. Get me a vehicle." Hannah followed him out, breath quick in the cold. "She won't survive long out there, not with that leg of Roxy's." "She won't be alone," Luke said. "Roxy's smarter than half the force." The forest of Pine Ridge was a skeleton of its old self. Charred trunks, ash frozen into the ground, silence thick as smoke. Emily held her flashlight low, following the blinking arrow on the tracker. "Almost there," she whispered. Roxy trotted beside her, limping but determined. The signal led them to a clearing where a small cabin stood half-burned, its roof collapsed on one side. The door hung crooked. Emily's breath puffed white as she stepped closer. Roxy stopped suddenly, ears forward, tail stiff. A low growl rumbled in her throat. Emily froze. "What is it?" A faint sound answered, a muffled cry from inside. Emily's pulse spiked. She pushed open the door. The smell of smoke and mildew hit her first, then the sight. A woman tied to a chair, duct tape across her mouth, face bruised. Her badge, half hidden under her torn jacket, read Special Agent Dana Holt. Emily gasped. "Hold on, I'll help you." She rushed forward, fumbling with the tape. The agent flinched, then froze when she saw Roxy. "Shh, it's okay," Emily whispered. "She's a friend." Once free, Dana coughed hard, voice hoarse. How did you find me?" Emily held up the tracker. "This thing. It was in my dad's evidence bag." Dana's eyes widened. "That device shouldn't even be active. Silas must not know it survived." She reached for her jacket, pulling out a small flash drive. "Everything's on here. Proof of his network, the canine experiments, the funding trail. I was transporting it when they caught me." Roxy suddenly barked, loud and sharp. Dana's expression darkened. "They'll come back. We have to move." Emily turned towards the door, but outside, faint lights flickered through the trees. Vehicles. She swallowed hard. Too late. Roxy stepped forward, standing between them and the window. Her ears twitched as engines hummed closer. "Emily," Dana said, voice low. "You still have your flashlight?" Emily nodded, confused. "Good. The old emergency beacon code. 3 bursts. Wait, 3 again. You remember it?" "My mum used to show me," Emily whispered. "From her camping trips. Do it now. Aim it towards the ridge." Emily climbed to the broken window and aimed the flashlight toward the dark horizon. She clicked 3 short bursts, paused, then 3 more. The light cut through the fog like a flare. Far away on the highway, Luke's cruiser screeched to a halt. He grabbed his binoculars. "That's her signal. Pine Ridge Ridgeline," Hannah said. 2 miles out." Luke hit the siren and gunned the engine. Inside the cabin, Dana shoved the flash drive into Emily's coat pocket. "If I don't make it out, you give this to your father. Tell him Holt said the truth lives in the dark files." Emily's eyes widened. "No, you're coming too." Before Dana could answer, a window shattered. A smoke grenade rolled inside. Roxy barked furiously, biting the canister and throwing it back out the door. The explosion muffled the outside, but a shadow moved in the smoke. Armed men advancing. "Down!" Dana shouted, grabbing Emily and pulling her under the broken beam. Bullets ripped through the walls. Roxy lunged again, teeth flashing, catching one of the men at the doorway. Another shouted, "Grab the dog alive!" But Roxy twisted free, slamming him into the doorframe. Outside, the growl of engines grew louder, the sirens. Luke's voice cracked through the storm. "Emily! Dad!" she screamed back. Luke burst through the smoke, gun drawn. He fired once, sending the last attacker sprawling. Then he saw her, his daughter, covered in soot. Clutching a flashlight, Roxy pressed close beside her. He ran to them, dropping to his knees. "You're safe," he whispered, hugging them both. Dana staggered up behind them, blood on her temple. "The data's safe, but Silas, he's still moving his operation north." Luke met her eyes. "Then we end it." Outside, the storm broke, moonlight piercing through the thinning clouds. Snow glistened across the burned earth. Roxy sat in the doorway, staring out into the distance, her coat glowing silver under the pale light. One ear twitched at the faint sound of sirens fading away. Emily leaned against Luke, whispering, "She found the truth, didn't she?" Luke nodded. She always does. And there, amid the ashes of Pine Ridge, the line between fear and faith blurred, one child's courage and one dog's loyalty igniting the first light of justice. The storm rolled in like a living thing, sheets of snow slashing sideways, the air screaming through the blackened pines of Pine Ridge. Luke stood at the head of the tactical convoy, coat flapping in the wind, eyes fixed on the flickering signal of the tracker Dana had recovered. The storm drowned out everything except the sound of his heartbeat. "Team Alpha moves left," he shouted into the radio. "Bravo with me. We end this tonight." The men fanned out, ghosts against the snow. Behind them, the flashing lights of the sheriff's convoy blurred in the blizzard, red and blue bleeding into the white. Roxy limped beside Luke, bandaged but insistent on joining the fight. Hannah had begged him to leave her behind. Emily had cried. But when Luke tried to close the door of the cruiser, Roxy had wedged herself in, eyes locked on his as if to say, "You'll need me." Now, as the first gunshots cracked through the trees, Luke was starting to believe she was right. Through the scope of his rifle, he could see the old fuel depot at the edge of the ridge, the same insignia as before, Ridge Logistics, half covered by snow. Inside, shadows moved, the flash of muzzle fire briefly lighting silhouettes. Cole's voice came through the comms, breath ragged. "We've got contact on the east flank. They're falling back toward the main shack." "Hold your line," Luke ordered. "No one gets through." Snow exploded near his feet, a bullet tearing into the ground. He dropped, returning fire, the recoil slamming through his arms. Roxy darted ahead, barking once, drawing attention from the left side. "Stay close," he yelled, but she was already gone, slipping through the white haze like smoke. The firefight spread across the ridge. Gunfire echoed between the trees, swallowed by wind. Silas's men, dressed in black winter gear, moved with precision. Mercenaries, not smugglers. Luke pushed forward, weaving between trunks, his breath fogging the scope. Then he saw him. Silas Grant stood on the upper ledge of the ridge, coat whipping open, rifle raised. The snow made his outline flicker like a mirage. Luke shouted, "It's over, Silas! Drop it!" Silas's voice was calm, almost mocking. "You should have stayed in your lane, Sheriff. This was never your fight." "This town is my fight," Luke said. "Those dogs, those soldiers, they trusted people like you." Silas smirked. "Trust is a leash, Carter. Someone always holds the other end." The crack of gunfire drowned the rest. Bullets tore through bark inches from Luke's head. He dove behind a fallen tree, returning fire. Cole's team was pinned down by the warehouse, radio calls overlapping in static. "Luke, we're outnumbered. Fall back." "Negative," Luke barked. "We end it here." He peered out again, but Silas was gone, a rustle behind him. Luke spun, weapon raised, just as a shadow lunged from the storm. Silas slammed into him, knocking the rifle aside. They crashed into the snow, fists colliding, breath turning to mist. "You ruined everything," Silas snarled, pinning Luke's arm. "Do you even know what they were building? Enhanced K9 units? Biological precision? You destroyed years of work?" "They were lives," Luke spat, "not weapons." Silas swung again, the blow splitting Luke's lip. He reached for the pistol strapped to his thigh, but a sound cut through the chaos. A low, furious growl. "Roxy!" She burst from the blizzard, slamming into Silas with a force that sent both tumbling. He fired once, the flash blinding. The bullet hit Roxy in the shoulder. She yelped but didn't stop, her teeth clamping onto Silas's wrist, wrenching the gun away. "Roxy, no!" Luke shouted, crawling forward. Blood soaked into the snow beneath her. Silas kicked her off, staggering up. He raised his weapon again, aimed directly at Luke. For a moment, everything slowed, The storm, the noise, the world itself. Roxy moved first. She lunged between them just as Silas fired. The gunshot cracked through the mountain like thunder. The bullet hit her high in the shoulder, spinning her sideways. Luke's scream tore through the wind. He fired twice in return. Both rounds found their mark. Silas stumbled back, shock flickering across his face as crimson spread down his coat. He collapsed into the snow without a word. Silence. The wind eased. The storm seemed to lose its strength all at once, as if the fight itself had held it together. Luke crawled toward Roxy, his hands shaking. She lay half buried in snow, blood staining her fur. Her eyes fluttered open when she felt his hand. Hey, stay with me," he whispered. "You're okay. You're gonna be okay." She blinked slowly, pressing her muzzle weakly against his hand. Behind him, Cole and the team approached, weapons lowered. The smoke from gunfire drifted away. "Luke," Cole said quietly. "It's over." Luke didn't look up. Not for her. Emily broke through the tree line, running as fast as her small legs could carry her. Hannah chased behind, shouting her name. "Dad!" she cried, sliding to her knees beside Roxy. No, please." Luke's voice cracked. "She saved me." Emily's tears froze against her cheeks as she cupped Roxy's face. "You're our hero," she whispered, the words trembling through the cold. Roxy's tail twitched once, barely perceptible, before she went still. Snow began to fall again, soft and slow, covering the red that marred the white. Luke bowed his head, pressing his forehead to hers. For a long time, no one spoke. Then the wind shifted, carrying away the last echoes of gunfire. The storm was finally breaking. Dawn crept over the ridge, faint light bleeding through clouds. Luke stood, cradling Roxy's body, her fur gleaming silver under the pale sun. Around him, the deputies gathered the wounded, cuffed the survivors, but no one dared interrupt. He looked down at Emily, who clung to his leg, and said quietly, "She didn't just save me. She saved all of us." As the last of the snow settled, the mountain was silent again. Not with fear this time, but reverence. Like the world itself was pausing to honor a soldier who had never stopped fighting, even when she had nothing left to give. The blizzard had ended, but in Silverbend, her name would echo long after the wind forgot to blow. The snow had long since melted from the streets of Silverbend, leaving behind patches of brown grass and puddles that reflected the pale March sun. The town had begun to breathe again. The storm, both real and human, had passed. Luke Carter stood outside what used to be the old ranger station, its roof newly painted white, the front porch repaired by his own hands. A wooden sign hung on the gate, Silverbend Canine Sanctuary. He looked at it for a long moment before unlocking the door. Inside, the scent of pine and fresh paint mixed with something softer, straw, disinfectant, life. Roxy barked once from the corner, still moving with a slight limp, but standing strong. "Morning, girl," Luke said softly. She wagged her tail and nudged one of her pups toward him. 4 of them, 3 already tumbling over each other in play, 1 sitting back. Smaller, quieter. Emily was kneeling beside them, feeding the runt from a small bottle. "She's eating better today," she said, her voice full of careful joy. Luke smiled. "You've got the touch, kiddo." Emily looked up. "Her name's Hope, because she almost didn't make it." He knelt down, brushing a finger under the pup's chin. "Hope, huh? That's a good name." Hannah entered with a folder in her arms, hair tied up, face tired but content. "We're officially cleared for operations. Donations are coming in faster than I expected. People want to help the dogs from the old canine program." Luke nodded, his gaze distant. They deserve it. Every one of them. He still saw it sometimes. The night of the firefight, the snow turned red, the silence that followed. He'd wake up sweating, convinced he could hear gunfire, only to find Roxy sleeping at the foot of his bed, breathing steady. She had survived the bullet wound after all, though the vet said it was a miracle. When the news broke that Silas Grant had died during an ongoing investigation, Luke hadn't felt relief, just a dull ache. Too many good officers had looked the other way. But things were changing. Cole had been promoted to acting sheriff, and within weeks, internal affairs swept through the department like a second storm. 2 deputies resigned. 1 was arrested. Justice, slow but steady, had begun to crawl back into Silver Bend. Luke signed the last of the documents on Hannah's clipboard. "You really think people will bring their dogs here?" She smiled faintly. "People bring their guilt, Luke, their pain. The dogs help carry some of it away." He looked around the sanctuary again. Sunlight spilled through the windows, warming the concrete floors. Rows of kennels stretched along the back wall, open, clean, inviting. A handful of local volunteers were assembling play fences outside. Roxy watched them all, calm, alert, almost regal. Emily crouched beside her. "She's like the Queen," she whispered. Luke chuckled. "She earned it." Hannah walked over and leaned against the doorframe beside him. "You could have stayed, you know. The governor called again this morning. They still want you back on duty." "I'm done chasing ghosts," he said quietly. "Besides, I think I found something worth guarding." He nodded toward Emily and Roxy, who were now in the sunlight, the pups circling their feet. Hannah followed his gaze. "They say healing doesn't happen overnight." Luke smiled, eyes soft. "Maybe not, but it starts somewhere." Outside, a car approached the gate, a dark SUV with government plates. Luke tensed for a moment, old instincts kicking in. A woman stepped out, Agent Dana Holt. "Relax," she said, smiling faintly as she approached. "Not here on business. Just thought you should know. The Bureau officially shut down the Ridge project. Every file, every facility. You did good, Carter." He nodded. "Wasn't just me." Her eyes fell on Roxy. "I heard she made it." "She did," Luke said. "Better than most of us." Dana crouched and extended her hand. Roxy sniffed it once, then licked her fingers. "Guess she forgives us," Dana murmured. "Dogs are better at that than people," Luke replied. As Dana left, the air grew still again. The only sounds were the pups yipping, the creak of the old windmill, and the rustle of pine branches swaying in the breeze. Emily looked up from where she sat in the grass. "Dad, do you think she remembers everything that happened?" Luke took a long breath. "Maybe, but I think she remembers who stayed." That night, after everyone had gone, Luke walked the grounds alone. The sky was clear, stars like frost on glass. He paused near Roxy's pen. She lay there quietly, her pups curled, against her side. When she saw him, she lifted her head, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. He crouched beside the fence. "You gave me my life back, you know that?" Her tail brushed the straw once. Luke smiled. "Rest easy, girl. You've done enough." From the house, Emily's laughter drifted faintly through the night, mixing with the soft yips of the pups. Luke stood there for a while, breathing in the cold, clean air. Silver Bend was quiet again, not because the danger had gone, but because it had been faced, fought, and finally laid to rest. Inside the kennel, Hope stirred, nudging closer to her mother's warmth. Roxy lowered her head, eyes closing, as if guarding them even in sleep. And for the first time in months, Luke Carter believed in peace. Not the kind that came from silence, but the kind that came after the storm had passed. The morning air in Silver Bend carried a thin chill, the kind that bit softly at the skin but smelled of pine and renewal. Snow lay in patches across the meadow, melting slowly under the first light of spring. The park gates were draped with ribbons of blue and white, and at the center stood a bronze statue, a German shepherd poised on alert, eyes fixed toward the horizon. A small plaque beneath it read, "Roxy and the Guardians for those who never stopped protecting." Luke Carter stood quietly among the crowd. His sheriff's badge was long retired, replaced by the plain jacket of a search and rescue trainer. His hands were calloused from work, his eyes older, softer. Beside him stood Hannah, her arm brushing against his. Emily, now taller, held a bouquet of wildflowers. The governor spoke from the podium, his voice echoing across the park. "1 year ago, Silverbend weathered a storm that tested our courage. Today we honor not only the officers who stood their ground, but also a hero who reminded us what loyalty truly means, Roxy, the K9 who gave everything for her family and this town." Applause rose from the crowd. Veterans, children, firefighters, and locals who had lived through the chaos of that winter. Luke listened in silence. He didn't need the words. He remembered every moment, the snow, the blood, the sound of Roxy's bark cutting through the wind like a promise. After the ceremony, people began to place flowers at the statue's base. Emily stepped forward first, laying her bouquet of yellow daisies. Her voice trembled just a little. "She would have liked these," she whispered. Hannah smiled faintly. "She liked anything you touched." Luke crouched beside the statue, running his hand across the cold bronze fur. "You kept your promise, girl," he murmured. "You guarded us right to the end." A voice piped up from behind. A boy, maybe 6 years old, tugging on his father's sleeve. "Is that the dog from the story?" The question drifted through the quiet, catching Luke by surprise. He turned, meeting the boy's curious eyes. For a moment he didn't answer. Then he smiled, gaze lifting toward the hills beyond the park. "She didn't bark for food," he said softly. "She barked for the truth." The crowd around them fell silent. Even the breeze seemed to pause. A shaft of sunlight broke through the clouds, landing squarely on the statue. The bronze glowed, eyes gleaming gold, muzzle glistening as if alive. The hills beyond shimmered with melting snow, and somewhere, far off in the distance, a lone dog barked. Luke's eyes lingered on the horizon. "Some heroes wear uniforms," he said quietly. "Others just wait for someone to listen." Emily slipped her hand into his. "She'd be proud of you." He looked down at her, smiling. "No, she'd be proud of you, for finding her that night." The ceremony ended, and people began to drift away, though many stayed to take photos or simply stand in silence before the statue. At the edge of the field, a group of young volunteers released 4 rescue dogs, descendants of Roxy's litter, into the fenced training ground nearby. The smallest one, a sable-coated pup named Hope, bounded toward Emily, wagging furiously. Emily knelt, laughing as Hope jumped into her arms. "She's got her mum's spirit," Hannah said. "Yeah," Luke murmured, "and her courage." He looked at the park again, the sunlight on the hills, the glint of the statue's eyes, the children playing by the trail. Life had returned to Silverbend, fragile but unbroken. That evening, when the park emptied and the sun dipped behind the ridge, Luke stayed behind. He stood alone before the statue, his breath forming mist in the cooling air. "Rest easy, Roxy," he whispered. "We've got it from here." He turned to leave, but a soft breeze rustled through the pines. It sounded almost like a low bark, faint, familiar, fading into the distance. Luke smiled, tipping his head toward the wind. "Still guarding, huh?" The bronze statue caught the last light of the day, Roxy's eyes reflecting the horizon, where snow met sky. And as the screen faded, a line appeared across the scene, carried on the sound of wind and memory. She didn't bark for food, she barked for the truth. A pause, and then the final words. He didn't bark for food, he barked for the forgotten. What's your story with a loyal pet? If Roxy's courage moved you, share her story. Subscribe to German Shepherd Stories, where loyalty, love, and redemption live on.